Millionaire fired black nanny for taking his daughter to church. A week later, he fell to his knees. What happens when a nanny takes a grieving child to church and gets fired for it? A millionaire father obsessed with control never expected his daughter to teach him the most powerful lesson of all. What happened next shook their entire world. There were no bells ringing in Hunter Black's house. When things got uncomfortable, people didn't talk it out. They got terminated. From the outside, his mansion in Bel Air looked like something ripped from a lifestyle magazine. The lawn was so perfect it felt illegal to step on. The windows opened themselves. The kitchen island gleamed like a showroom prop, and the refrigerator was stocked with imported almond milk no one actually drank. Everything in the place was pristine, posed, and painfully paused. Even the emotions, especially the emotions. Camilla Wallace knew that house better than her old sneakers. She wasn't just the nanny, she was the warmth in the place, one of those black women white families like to call part of the family, until she dares to act like she actually is. Hired not to challenge the system, but to put a soothing balm over its cracks. And Camilla had done that with grace. Every day, until the Sunday she chose God over silence. It was 9:42 a.m., a sunny California morning. Camilla did what millions of people across the country do without second thought. She went to church. Only this time, little Georgia Black came with her. Georgia, 7 years old, with curls like her mother's and questions her father never answered, had woken up crying that morning. "I miss Mommy," she whispered, gripping her teddy bear like it was the last steady thing in the world. Her mother had passed 2 years ago, and her father, well, he filled the void with Swiss boarding schools, a personal security team, and educational apps. But Camilla, she offered something else. Realness, a hand to hold, songs sung from the soul. She wasn't a stand-in. She was home. They went to church together. Nothing fancy. A small, loving community. Camilla wore a sunflower yellow dress. Georgia wore lavender with white shoes. They sang. They prayed. They smiled. And when they walked back in, still holding hands, still humming the psalm of the day, Hunter Black was waiting like the final boss of a video game nobody wanted to play. He stood at the entrance dressed in his usual black turtleneck and overpriced Italian loafers. His face carried the kind of expression reserved for stock market crashes and unexpected traffic on the way to a yacht meeting. "Where have you been?" His voice was cold, surgical, the kind of voice that makes interns cry in elevators. Camilla stood still, tall, calm. This woman had made it through racist professors, hospital graveyard shifts, and landlords who just didn't feel comfortable. She wasn't about to tremble in front of a man who got awards for lactose-free yogurt innovation. "We were at church, sir," she said plainly, like the truth was heavy but worth carrying. His eyes twitched. The man who scheduled his daughter's emotional development around PTA emails had not been prepared for this. For real emotion. For faith. "At church?" he repeated as if the word itself were offensive. "You took my daughter to church?" He said church like it was some underground fight club. Camilla didn't blink. She asked to go. She needed something real. And that's when the whole theater began. Talks of protocol, security risks, and professional boundaries. He spoke as if Camilla had smuggled the child into a secret political protest. Georgia stood off to the side, wide-eyed, clutching that same teddy bear, watching the only person who had truly loved her since her mother died get dressed down like she was trash. "You're fired," Hunter said without looking her in the eye. Camilla didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't make a scene. She just picked up her bag, Bible still tucked beneath her arm, and left the house the way she lived, with quiet dignity and a strength that scared people who had only ever learned how to control, not how to feel. Georgia didn't eat dinner that night, not because she wasn't hungry, but because betrayal sits heavy on a child's chest. "Why did you fire Camilla?" she asked at the table. Hunter didn't look up from his tablet. His smart home was suggesting a new organic tofu recipe. "She broke the rules," he muttered. "Because she's black," Georgia said. He choked on his sparkling water. "What did you just say?" "I'm not stupid, Dad." And for once, he had nothing to say, because the truth wasn't that she broke protocol. It was that Camilla had taken his daughter somewhere he couldn't go, emotionally, spiritually, and racially, and it made him uncomfortable. And because he had money, when he got uncomfortable, people disappeared. Georgia walked away, and the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was punishment. The next day, the agency sent in a new nanny, blonde, overly cheerful, dressed like she just got cast in a Disney Channel reboot. "Hi, Georgia. I've got a list of psychologist-approved activities." Georgia didn't even look up. "I've got a list of people who aren't Camilla," she mumbled, then turned her back. Meanwhile, over in Inglewood, in a small apartment where the fan made more noise than the TV, Camilla was seated at her tiny kitchen table with a laptop balancing on her knees. She was filling out job applications like they were lottery tickets. Only instead of numbers, she kept getting silence. Rejections, ghosted. She wasn't surprised. America loves black women when they sing gospel or pose with cute white babies. But ask for equity, ask for trust, suddenly the resume gets lost in the system. She made tea, sat down, pulled out a drawing Georgia had made. Me and Camilla at church. They were holding hands. A rainbow overhead. The kind of rainbow kids draw before they learn people weaponize innocence. That night, the internet did what it does best. Dig deep and blow up. An anonymous account at The Rich Watcher posted side-by-side images. One of Camilla and Georgia sitting together on a church pew, smiling mid-hymn. The second, a time-stamped clip from a security camera showing Camilla walking out of the black residence with her bag, while Hunter stood in the doorway, arms crossed, not even offering a glance. The caption, "She loved the kid. He loved control." Comments poured in, "Fired for going to church. Man broke the 10 Commandments in HR protocol." So this is what they mean by not the right cultural fit. Hunter's PR team went full DEFCON 1. Emergency Zooms, crisis language, hashtag analysis. If we don't respond now, we lose the whole East Coast donor circle. But the worst blow didn't come from Twitter. It came from Sandra Rivers, an old family friend and current board member for one of Hunter's investment projects. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just said, "You hired that woman to love your child. She did, and you punished her for it. You didn't just fire a nanny, Hunter. You dismissed humanity." Click, end of call. That night, walking through his own home, Hunter stepped over a box in the middle of the living room floor, hand-decorated. Scribbled words, "Memories with Camilla." Inside, a dried flower, a church button, stick figure drawings of hugs. For the first time in a long time, the tech mogul sat down and said nothing. Not because he had no signal, but because the signal, the real one, had finally come through. Monday morning started with a cup of coffee that tasted like an apology, rushed, bitter, and made without an ounce of sincerity. In the Black House, everything was still running on schedule. The curtains opened like soldiers at sunrise. The fridge politely reminded them about the strawberries expiring tomorrow, and the smart speaker asked if Georgia wanted to rewatch Frozen, this time with educational commentary. But Georgia was not interested in educational commentary, or strawberries, or coffee. She wasn't following any plan, especially not the one her father and his assistants had laid out like blueprints for a future she didn't ask for. She refused breakfast, sat on the floor of her room, cradling her teddy bear-like armor, her silence thicker than any walls money could buy. The new nanny approached cautiously, like a tourist trying to pet a lion, cheerful smile, eyes full of fear. "Maybe we can try your smart cards today," she offered, holding up a box of flashcards with colors and animals printed in a way no child had ever found exciting. Georgia didn't even lift her eyes. "You don't smell like Camilla." And there it was, the first truth of the day. A child knows love from labor. And what this nanny brought into that room wasn't love. It was effort. It was strategy. It was notes from a binder labeled engagement techniques. Meanwhile, Camilla Wallace was seated in a public library on the edge of South Central, where the Wi-Fi was steady, the chairs creaked like unspoken regrets, and the air carried the quiet frustration of people looking for second chances. She refreshed the job site page again, and again, and again. Nanny wanted, governess wanted, child care provider with a non-existent Harvard degree, and the patience of Mother Teresa for minimum wage. Click, refresh, apply, silence, as if the entire system had met in secret and said, "You were seen, too seen, and now we can't afford you." On the table next to her, a forgotten children's book lay open. Bright cover, big letters. "You can do anything if someone loves you." Camilla smirked. "Yeah, unless that someone filters love through race-neutral hiring criteria." She closed the laptop, leaned back, and let herself feel the stillness. That space between survival and belief. The kind of space where dreams are put on layaway, indefinitely. Up on the 5th floor of a glossy tower in Westwood, a different kind of storm brewed. Inside the conference room with its glass walls and espresso machine that cost more than Camilla's yearly rent, Hunter Black sat at the head of the table. PR exec Simon, always too tan, too smiley, too quick to say, let's pivot, was already mid-sentence. We've got 2.3 million views on that post from the rich watcher, Simon said, his tone sharp but fake concerned. Hunter, it's going viral. People want answers, apologies, something, even if it's just theater. Hunter stared out the window. The city was bright, too bright. I didn't do anything wrong, he mumbled. Across from him, Sandra Rivers leaned in, the only one in the room who didn't blink when the heat turned up. Black, sharp, brilliant, eyes like a storm that knew when to strike. You don't get to decide that anymore, she said flatly. Twitter does, and right now they control your donor base, your board seats, and that little reputation you care so much about. Hunter stayed silent. Sandra didn't. You destroyed a bond between your child and the only adult who gave her more than pre-programmed smiles and sugar-free snacks. And for what? Because she took your daughter somewhere warm? Somewhere that scared your privilege? She broke protocol. No, Sandra cut in. She broke white discomfort. And that's not a crime. That's a threat to the system you're still clinging to. Hunter looked away. That evening, for the first time in 3 days, he walked into his daughter's room. She was sitting on the floor, scissors in hand, cutting out hearts from brown cardboard. Each heart had a word written in crayon. Camilla. Forgiveness. Prayer. Hey, he said softly. She didn't look up. Did you find Camilla? No, but I'm trying. She paused. I don't believe you. Hunter felt it like a punch to the ribs. Not anger, not attitude, just disappointment. The kind that didn't yell. It simply walked away from your soul. That night, he couldn't sleep. The next morning, he walked into the headquarters lobby. The security guard gave him a polite, stiff nod. None of the usual small talk. Even the barista at the in-house Starbucks served his latte just a little less hot. People didn't say it out loud, but they didn't need to. He had lost something bigger than image. He'd lost respect. As he passed the meditation room, the one he had built to center the team spiritually, he saw his assistant inside, the same one who'd anonymously leaked the church photo. She was seated cross-legged, reading a book titled How to Truly Listen to Others. Irony sobbed somewhere in a corner. Camilla, meanwhile, stood at a cracked bus stop near Florence Avenue, folder of resumes under her arm, eyes watching a sky that hadn't decided if it wanted to cry or not. She glanced at her phone. Messages from church friends poured in. We stand with you. You did the right thing. Proud of you, sister. And one from an unknown number. Ms. Wallace, I'm the principal at Liberty Elementary. We saw what happened. Would you come in for an interview? She exhaled. Long. Steady. Sometimes when one door closes with a slap, God kicks down a wall to make room. Back at Hunter's estate, the farce continued. His PR team shoved a script into his hands. Polished lines filled with contrition, artificial regret, and we value diversity language made to sound heartfelt. They set up the camera, adjusted the lighting, told him to breathe. He read the first paragraph, then the second. But by the third, his voice caught. Not because of nerves, but because all he could hear in his head was George's voice. Because she's black, he stood, turned off the camera, sat back in his chair. I won't lie. Not to them, not to her, not to myself. That evening, without warning, his mother showed up. Gray hair, stern eyes, presence like gravity. She didn't greet him, just walked in, opened his laptop, and read the draft of the piece he had written. Not the PR one, the real one. The one where he told the truth. She closed the lid. If you want to be a good father, she said, start simple. Admit you messed up. Not in business, in humanity. He swallowed. What if it's too late? Then build your way back, even if you have to crawl. Later that night, Hunter stood alone in the kitchen, box in his hands, George's memory box. Inside were crayon drawings, old church pamphlets, pressed flowers, and one new drawing. It showed Georgia in the middle, her father on one side, Camilla on the other, all holding hands. But Camilla held a key. He placed the box gently on the counter, turned off the voice assistant. No music, no reminders, no noise, just silence. Honest, raw silence. Tomorrow he would call Camilla, but the real question wasn't whether he'd speak. It was whether she'd want to listen. By the third day after Camilla's firing, the silence inside the black household was no longer just heavy. It was scraping across the glass walls like fingernails. It clawed through the luxury and the light automation. Not even the fountains outside could mask the dead quiet that had settled into every inch of that house, like an unwelcome guest. Georgia wasn't talking. Not to the dog, not to her iPad, not even to the little robot that usually brought her juice and blinked its way into her trust. She stayed in her room, fortress mode, lights off, curtains drawn, clutching her teddy bear like it was the only truth left in a world full of clean lies. Occasionally, she would venture out to grab an apple, not because she was hungry, but because even protest needs sustenance. And she'd shoot her father a look so sharp it could slice through glass. That look wasn't loud, it didn't scream, but it said everything. You hurt the only person who made me feel safe. And Hunter? He was unraveling. Not publicly, not yet, but the cracks were showing. His face was plastered across Twitter and TikTok like a modern fable. Billionaire fires nanny for prayer, now praying for likes. There were memes, lots of them. One showed him holding a church bulletin like it was toxic. The caption read, "Blessed are the tone deaf." He might have laughed once, but not now. Not when it stung this bad. Not when the silence at home echoed louder than the mockery online. That night, as the fountains outside gurgled like they were laughing at him, Hunter did something he'd only done twice in his life without an assistant's involvement. He picked up the phone, dialed the number, waited, one ring, two, a pause that felt longer than a confession. "Mr. Black," her voice, not broken, not bitter, just steady, strong. A voice that had sung lullabies, whispered prayers, and stood tall through storms no tech stock could weather. "Camilla, He stopped. For once, the words that usually poured from him in business meetings like script didn't come. This wasn't a deal. This wasn't a pivot. This was truth, and truth had weight. "I want to talk." "I'm listening." "Not on the phone, please, come to the house." "Not as an employee, as someone I owe." A pause, not long, but long enough to test sincerity. "I'll come, but only for Georgia." Click. The next morning, the air in the house was different, warmer, as if the walls themselves knew redemption might finally walk through the door. And then she did. Camilla, in her modest coat, scarf around her neck, the same one Georgia had given her 2 Christmases ago. She didn't knock. She didn't need to. Georgia heard the door and launched herself into the foyer like a storm, all curls and open arms. "You came?" She wrapped herself around Camilla like she'd been holding her breath for 3 days. And Camilla held her back the way only women who've raised children not their own know how to. Hunter stood nearby, awkward, like a teenager who forgot to study for a final exam. He cleared his throat. "Can we talk in the study?" Camilla nodded. No words, just quiet acceptance. But her eyes said, "Make it count." They entered the room where Hunter had signed million-dollar deals, fired executives, negotiated international contracts. But today he wasn't there to control anything. He was there to ask for something that couldn't be purchased. "I was wrong," he started. "You were scared," she corrected him. "Not mean, just honest." "I was afraid of how it would look. Investors, my board, even my mother." "No," she cut him off again, calmly. "You were afraid that a black woman with faith and love could get closer to your daughter than you ever have?" He sat with that, nodded. "Yes, that's exactly what I was afraid of." Her gaze didn't flinch. It didn't soften either. This wasn't forgiveness yet. This was reckoning. "You don't bandage a wound while it's still bleeding." "And now?" she asked. "You want me back? To disappear into the background again? Be the comfort without being seen?" He shook his head, got up, walked to the safe behind his desk, pulled out a folder. He handed it to her. "It's a foundation. In your name. I want you to create a child wellness center. Your design, your program, your vision. I'll fund it. You run it. No strings. No cameras." Camilla blinked, slow. Her fingers touched the folder like it might burn her. "Why?" "Because I want to be a father, not a boss. Because a child who trusts you taught me more about love than all the therapy sessions and board meetings I've ever sat through." And Camilla? She laughed, loud, deep. The kind of laugh that fills up a room and dares it to challenge her right to joy. "You just figured that out?" Hunter smiled, embarrassed, human. "Yeah, because I've spent too long pretending I could buy love, package it, and download it on a device." Georgia walked in, quietly. "Dad, you sound like you're giving a TED Talk." Then to Camilla, "Can you wake me up tomorrow again? With your song?" Camilla looked at Hunter. He nodded, not like a man giving permission, but like one learning when to step back. "Of course, baby," with a prayer and a tune. And just like that, the house changed. There were sounds again, toast popping, laughs from upstairs. Even the dog seemed less nervous, but the peace didn't last long. 2 days later, Camilla received a summons. Legal papers. Breach of confidentiality and reputational harm. Plaintiff? One of Hunter's corporate partners, a man whose last name sounded like money and who didn't appreciate bad PR affecting stock options. So while one white man was learning to apologize, another was sharpening his knives. Classic. Camilla didn't panic. She made one call. To a woman named Miss Joan, retired but not tired, black, bold, a lawyer with a voice like judgment and a hairstyle like a steel crown. They're bluffing, Joan said. They want to scare you, but fear's behind you now. Walk into that courtroom and let them be the ones who tremble. Court day came. Hunter showed up, alone. No entourage, no handlers, just him. In a suit, but without the armor of arrogance. He sat beside Camilla. When the judge asked who was speaking for the plaintiff, Hunter stood. Your Honor, he began. I initiated the termination. Camilla Wallace broke no laws, no contracts. She only challenged my ignorance. I asked that this suit be dismissed. Immediately, the courtroom held its breath. The judge raised an eyebrow. A man whose face looked like it had been carved from brick. Are you willing to confirm that under oath? I just did, sir. From the back of the gallery, Georgia watched. Her father didn't look like a mogul. He looked like a man, one finally learning how to be a human being. Outside the courthouse, the press swarmed Camilla. Would she sue? Would she go public? She simply said, he didn't become a new man. He became an honest one. And sometimes that's the beginning of everything. The morning after the court hearing, the Black household didn't wake up to the kind of silence that echoes guilt or shame. No, this silence was different. It was the kind that settles into a room after truth has been spoken, after wounds have been acknowledged and not just bandaged. It was alive, not dead. Soft, not stifling, like the hush that floats through the air before someone says, Amen. Hunter Black woke early, not because his alarm told him to, not because his calendar screamed strategy call in 15, but because for the first time in a long time, he simply opened his eyes with a quiet awareness that today didn't require performance. He wasn't rising to be CEO, decision maker, or influencer. He wasn't putting on the armor of reputation or routine. This morning, he was just a man, a father, and if he was lucky, a learner. He walked barefoot through the hallway, not in a rush, not with a plan, just walking, feeling. The floor beneath his feet wasn't just stone anymore. It was real, cold, grounding. When he reached the kitchen, there she was, Camilla, wrapped in a floral robe, holding a mug of strong tea like it was sacred. She didn't flinch when he entered, didn't shift or pretend. She was home, not as a servant, but as someone rooted in truth. Next to her sat Georgia, elbows on the counter, crayons spread across the wood, her small hands smudged with pastel colors. She was drawing a tree, but not the kind with green leaves and birds. This one had branches full of hearts. Each heart bore a name. Mama, Camilla, Papa, God. Hunter stood still for a moment, not because he didn't know what to say, but because the picture said more than he ever could. That tree wasn't just a drawing. It was Georgia's blueprint of the world, the way she saw safety, love, and home. And he, for the first time, wasn't outside of it. He wasn't the one funding it or scheduling it. He was simply a branch on the tree, and that felt more grounding than all the titles in his resume. Good morning, he said quietly. Georgia didn't look up. It's Sunday, she said. Can we go to church? Hunter nodded. They didn't go to a cathedral with glass ceilings and polished marble. Camilla took them to her church, a small white building on the corner of a quiet street. It looked like it had seen storms and sung through them. The carpet at the front was worn. The pews creaked when people sat. But the choir didn't sing from sheet music. They sang from somewhere deeper, somewhere the world didn't touch, but pain did. When the three of them walked in, Camilla in her Sunday hat, Georgia with her little purse, and Hunter in a simple blue sweater, heads turned, not in judgment, in recognition. Folks knew who he was. The news had made sure of that, but they also saw how he walked, not in front, not as a spectacle, not with that I'm here to redeem myself swagger that some folks wore like cologne. He walked just behind his daughter, hands in pockets, humble, open. The sermon was about forgiveness, but not the kind that gets packaged in inspirational memes or tossed out like a retail apology. It was the kind that hurts before it heals, the kind that strips pride from the bone and forces a man to face who he's been and who he refused to be. Halfway through the message, Hunter stood up. He didn't plan it, didn't rehearse it. He just knew he needed to. Excuse me, he said, turning to the congregation. I know I'm interrupting, but there's something I have to say, and this is the only place where I think it'll mean something. He took a breath. I fired Camilla Wallace because she took my daughter to church, because I said it broke the rules. But the truth is, I was scared, not of faith, not of God, but of what she gave my daughter. Something I hadn't figured out how to give. Love, real love. Not the kind that comes with trust funds and tutors, but the kind that sits beside you when you cry. The kind that holds you without needing a reason. The room was quiet. He looked down, then up again. I've spent my life controlling everything, building walls, earning power. But she taught my daughter and me that love isn't about control. It's about trust, about showing up, about staying. Applause didn't erupt. It settled. Warm, software affirming. Not because he was a hero, but because he was finally human. After the service, they walked home. No limousine, no driver, just the three of them under the morning sun. Georgia held Camilla's hand in one and her father's in the other. For the first time in a long time, the triangle was complete. "Dad," she said mid-step, "you're different now." Hunter looked down at her, lips twitching into a smile. "No, baby, I'm just finally myself." A month later, the Wallace Center for Empathy and Care opened its doors. Named not after a donor, but after a woman who had walked through fire just by doing her job and loving someone else's child like her own. The center wasn't a press stunt. It wasn't built to fix reputations. It was built to serve children who had lost parents, kids who had been through systems that forgot how to hold them. There were therapists, mentors, pastors, teachers. And Camilla? She was the executive director. She walked those halls not as someone allowed in, but as someone the building was built for. Hunter came by sometimes, not to run anything, just to listen, to learn, to be useful, quietly. 2 months later, a feature appeared in a national magazine. Title, "The Billionaire Who Learned from His Nanny." The journalist asked, "You lost some business deals, some market share. Was it worth it?" Hunter didn't blink. "I lost control," he said, "but I gained a daughter, and I finally learned how to be a father." And Camilla, she still came by the house, but never on a schedule. Sometimes to have tea, sometimes just to sit. Georgia would ask her every now and then, "Camilla, will you ever leave again?" Camilla would smile and say, "Only if you stop needing love." And that, little one, isn't likely. One evening, as the sun set in golden pink hues, casting a soft glow through the kitchen windows, Hunter stood from the dinner table, slowly, quietly. He walked over to Camilla, and in front of his daughter in the home he'd once tried to run like a corporation, he knelt, not out of guilt, not out of desperation, out of gratitude. "Thank you," he said, not, "Please come back," not, "I'm sorry," just, "Thank you." Camilla looked at him, long and steady. No surprise, no pride, just presence. "You don't have to be perfect," she said, "just honest. And you're getting better at that." And in that moment, Hunter understood something no lecture or lawsuit had ever taught him. Kneeling wasn't weakness, it wasn't submission, it was clarity. It was knowing you'd been wrong and being willing to rise differently. It was love finally, without conditions. And that was something worth standing up for.